TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, Episode 1. Ali Abulaban, otherwise known as Jin Kid. Creator class type, comedian. Specialty, sketch writing. Claim to fame, Skyrim in real life. Well, you see, Jin Kid had amassed a respectable 940,000 followers on TikTok, as well as about 250,000 on Instagram. Well, little did his audience know at the time, Jin Kid's marriage was absolutely deteriorating. As a matter of fact, things eventually got to the point where his wife filed for divorce and he was told to move out. Now, over the course of the next few months, he would try anything he could to get his wife back, even if it meant doing the wrong thing. A few examples include stalking, breaking and entering, vandalizing, and installing a spy app on his daughter's iPad, and it was through this app Jin Kid would learn his wife was moving on. Well, one night he opens it up and what he hears instantly sends him into a rage. He can hear his estranged wife along with another male giggling and talking within the apartment. It was at this point Jin Kid grabbed a firearm and sped as fast as he could over to that apartment, and when he opened that door, within just a few seconds he would end both of their lives. Jin Kid is currently being charged with 2 counts of premeditated murder. And it is for that reason he is the very first in a series we're calling TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, Episode 2. Marissa Cloutier, otherwise known as Digital Princess. Creator class type, gamer girl. Specialty, debatable. Claim to fame, redacted. Back in August of 2021, Digital Princess, formerly known as Pokey Princess, had amassed a healthy 2.2 million followers on TikTok, as well as 250,000 on Instagram and around 49,000 subscribers on Twitch. Well, late one night, Fort Myers police receive a phone call about a crying 5-year-old child wandering around in Marissa's front yard. Well, this would turn out to be no other than the TikToker's son, and when they arrive on scene and enter her home, the TikToker is nowhere to be found. It was at this point they called her cell phone, and when she answered, she would explain she had simply gone on a quick late night run to purchase some laundry detergent and would be back home within a couple of minutes. However, police would take note of a couple of things. The detergent in which she had apparently just purchased was less than half full. She had no receipt, was wearing a black mini dress, and had a face full of makeup, not inducive of somebody who was running a quick late night errand. It was at this point she was arrested under suspicion of child neglect, and these headlines would go absolutely viral. Digital Princess would not only use this as an opportunity to promote her OnlyFans, she would begin profiting off of it, as she still does to this day. And as much as I would not like to say this, it actually worked. Now, I know a lot of you are probably saying this is not the worst thing a TikToker has done. Well, keep in mind, this child was found outside late at night crying out for his mother, who had left him completely unattended so that she could go out and party. And that, my friends, is how Digital Princess made our list of TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, Episode 3. Zachary Latham, otherwise known as C6_ Zach with 2 A's. Creator class type, instigator. Specialty, pissing his neighbors off. Claim to fame, the following incident. Well, prior to lockdowns in early 2020, Zach was really just another typical kid on this platform, doing anything he could to become famous. And you guessed it, even if it meant doing the wrong thing. Well, Zach begins posting all of these altercations he keeps getting into with his neighbors, all the while leaving out all of the horrible things he would do or say to them prior to filming. Needless to say, these videos would go absolutely viral across all platforms, and as the views continued to rack up, Zach would have to keep doubling down on what he was willing to do to them to gain this reaction, all leading up to the point where somebody would lose their life. Well, you see, some of his antics include, but are not limited to, shouting vulgar obscenities, hauling ass through the neighborhood, swerving towards them as they drove past each other, even going as far as to swerve towards their son, who was riding a bicycle. Well, later on that day, his neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Durham, would confront Zach about this as he's driving home through the neighborhood. Well, Zach gets out of his car, throws an elbow at Mrs. Durham, knocking her cell phone out of her hand, and proceeds to speed home. And as he pulls into his driveway, this giant altercation would take place between the entire Durham family, himself, and his wife. And as the scuffle ensued, Zach would fatally stab 51-year-old William Durham Sr. under the armpit. Latham is currently being charged with 1 count of aggravated manslaughter, 2 2 counts of aggravated assault and various weapons charges. And many out there firmly believe his wife purposefully filmed this altercation as Zach lured them into the garage so that he could kill someone to become TikTok famous, which is how he made our list of TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, Episode 4. Bethany Martin, otherwise known as 23 Bethany, 23. Creator class type, unknown. Specialty, being like totally stoked on life. Claim to fame, the following series of events. Well, back in July of 2021, Bethany, along with an unknown friend, had been walking home from a gas station at around 7:30 a.m. It was at this point they spotted deceased Marcus Adams hanging from a concrete structure in a drainage ditch. Now, rather than immediately calling the police, they would proceed to film Marcus from close up and post it on Snapchat, where Bethany can clearly be seen stealing the man's necklace. The girls then placed a call to an unknown male who would immediately notify the police as to Marcus's location. But things don't end here. Later on that same day, they would post a series of TikToks, and one of them went a little something like this. Meanwhile, that Snapchat had gone absolutely viral, so much so Marcus's family ended up seeing it. And it was at this time the 2 girls were placed under arrest. Bethany has since been charged with felony theft from a corpse. That being said, do you think she should be on our list of TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, Episode 5. Claire Miller, otherwise known as Spirits and Consulting. Creator class type, peculiar. Specialty, all things musically. Claim to fame, extremely disturbing. Well, prior to February of 2021, Claire had really just been using TikTok as a means to escape her life at home. And from lip syncing in front of a mirror to these quirky little dance moves, her account just really sort of blended in with a lot of the others during that time. And then it was like all of a sudden her content just started showing up on everybody's For You page, and one by one, as we clicked on that comment section, we would all come across one of TikTok's darkest and most disturbing stories still to this day. You see, Claire had a sister named Helen. She had cerebral palsy and was wheelchair bound due to her condition. It was for this reason Claire had to spend a lot of her time tending to her sister. And this, coupled with the fact she felt Helen had always overshadowed her, Claire eventually snapped. And so it is. Late one night in February of that year, Claire waited until her parents went to bed. She would then grab a kitchen knife, enter her sister's bedroom, and proceed to take Helen's life in an extremely brutal fashion. It is said she then walked outside, posted her final TikTok, and waited for the cops to arrive. Claire's parents would only learn of this after being woken up to the sound of law enforcement and emergency services running through their home attempting to save Helen's life. In addition to this, the state of Pennsylvania has determined, although Claire was a minor at the time of this crime, she will be tried as an adult. And it is for this reason Claire has made our list of TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, Episode 6. Yandere Freak, otherwise known as Snow the Salt Queen. Creator class type, cosplayer. Specialty, lip syncing. Claim to fame, a combination of the two, as well as a very bad decision. Well, by early 2021, Snow had accumulated 1.6 million followers on TikTok, and with millions of views across all platforms, she was no stranger to the cosplay community. As a matter of fact, many individuals who did not consider themselves to be a part of that community found themselves watching her content, and with no end in sight, it just seemed like the snow was going to keep accumulating everywhere she went. That is, until one fateful night in January of 2021. Her, along with a few friends, are drinking while watching Gotham in her Houston, Texas home. Well, after a while, Snow says, "Hey, I actually have a weapon, just like Penguin does." And before you know it, this weapon is just being tossed around and played with like it's no big deal, essentially like it's a toy. It was at this point one of her friends, also a cosplayer, jokingly said, "Oh, do me," at which point she did, and what turned into an innocent fun night just watching some TV turned into one of the most unfortunate circumstances on the platform, and Helen would pass away within just a few hours. Now, if the news of this event wasn't already shocking enough, to a lot of people it was more so the fact she would post a $20,000 bail and immediately resume posting her normal TikTok content for the next 9 months, as if nothing had ever happened. And Mary Ann Oliver Snow is being charged with manslaughter in the first degree, which carries a 2 to 20-year sentence, placing her on our list of TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, Episode 7, Chelsea Ship, otherwise known as Chelsea Ship 22. Creator class type, PBR. Specialty, I'm in trouble. Claim to fame, the following incident. Well, prior to just a few days ago, not many people on TikTok actually knew who Chelsea was. Although her name had been in the headlines for quite some time, her account just never really gained any traction, and this, coupled with the fact that the news of the following event did not gain much media attention, would fly relatively under the radar for quite some time. However, over the course of the last 24 hours, a specific video from her account has been making rounds. Well, 25-year-old Chelsea along with a 16-year-old Caitlin Stone were allegedly both having a relationship with the same man, 22-year-old Cody Arnold. Well, leading up to November of this year, Cody gets wind Caitlin might be pregnant, and after a series of talks with Chelsea, she determines the only way to keep Cody out of trouble is to kill Caitlin, and so she does. Late on the night of March 26, Chelsea snuck into Caitlin's room and ended Caitlin's life execution style from behind while she was sleeping. The very next day, Cody would be arrested after they found Caitlin in one of his bedrooms wrapped in a black garbage bag. Chelsea would be apprehended just a few days later. And aside from the fact this girl was 16, to make things even worse, a preliminary autopsy has determined Caitlin was likely not pregnant at the time. Both Ship and Arnold are currently awaiting trial while being held on a $1 million bond apiece. And this is how Chelsea made our list of TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, Episode 8, Zakia Duncan 5. Creator class type, Mom Talk. Specialty, Dancing with My Children. Claim to fame, the Texas House of Horrors. While most of Zakia's content involved her having these fun little family moments alongside 5 of her 7 children, the other 2 often being unaccounted for, and while yes, it's easy to assume there could be a rational explanation as to why they were never on camera, the reality was actually downright disturbing. Early one morning in October of this year, 2 teens can be seen wandering around their neighborhood in Cypress, Texas, knocking on doors and begging for help. And so eventually they come across this woman who allows them in and immediately calls 911. Now, while waiting on police to arrive, this woman begins feeding them as they look extremely malnourished. In addition to this, she notices substantial scarring around their wrists as well as a series of burns, bruises, and scratches all over them. And when the police finally arrive, the story they give is absolutely horrifying. Zakia had been holding them captive, handcuffed in a laundry room, barely feeding them enough to get by. At several points during this time period, they were forced to drink corrosive cleaners, as well as suffer through a laundry list of things we simply cannot mention on this platform. And I'm sure at this point a few of you out there are still trying to give this woman the benefit of the doubt. Well, take into account that later on that same day, she, along with her boyfriend Jova and remaining 5 children, have packed up and fled the state, leaving them behind. Zakia and Jova would be arrested just a few days later in Louisiana. Since then, they have been extradited back to Texas and are currently being held on a $1 million bond, adding her to the list of TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, Episode 9, Yuka Takaoka. Creator class type, cosplayer. Specialty, all things anime. Claim to fame, the Too Beautiful Criminal, or Yandere in real life. Now, for those of you who don't know what this word means, in the world of anime, it often refers to a sweet, shy schoolgirl who becomes deranged, often turning homicidal. And in the case of Takaoka, this is exactly what would go down. You see, she was dating a guy by the name of Phoenix Luna, and at some point during the course of this relationship, she stumbles upon this picture of Phoenix with another woman on his phone. It was at this this point, she went absolutely insane, pulling a knife and plunging it into the stomach of Phoenix Luna. And as he lay there pleading for his life, she would simply sit down, covered in his blood, light up a smoke, and wait on authorities to arrive. And seeing as this happened in a rather public setting, pictures of her sitting next to him immediately afterwards would go viral online, with the caption, "Yandere in real life." Now, although Phoenix was in critical condition for quite some time, he would survive the attack, and in a weird little twist, he would accept an apology from her for the sum of about $45,000, and this, coupled with the fact he had survived, Yuka is only serving 3 years for her crime. She is expected to be released sometime in 2024, adding her to our list of TikTokers who did terrible things, episode 10. Nicola Priest, otherwise known as Nikki P210. Creator class type, unknown. Specialty, not a single thing. Claim to fame, evil beyond belief. Now before we begin, there is a reason I have chosen this account to be the 10th installment of this series. That is, not a single thing so far on this list even compares to what this individual did. Well, prior to August of 2020, only a few thousand people even knew Nicola's account existed. Reason being, she just posted a bunch of randomized content, most of which would hardly resonate with anyone whatsoever. And here it is. On August 8th of that year, Nikki is trying to spend some alone time with her then boyfriend, Calum Redfern. However, her daughter Kaylee is not ready to go to bed yet, and thus keeps interrupting them while they're trying to get in the mood. It was at this point Nikki got up and attacked Kaylee with such ferocity. Paramedics would say it was the equivalent of being hit by a car going 40 miles an hour. I mean, the details of the report are so savage and graphic, we simply cannot mention them on this platform. What we can tell you is for the next several hours, Kaylee would lay there going in and out of consciousness, becoming more and more ill as the night went on. It wasn't until the next day, on August 9th, Nikki would call 999. At this point, Kaylee had been deceased for around 3 hours. Nikki would be sentenced to 15 years for ending the life of her very own daughter. Calum is serving 14, making her number 10 on our list of TikTokers who did terrible things, episode 11. Nico Khloe official, creator class type, artist, specialty, all things morbid, claim to fame, premeditated murder. From stealing body parts while working as a mortician to writing a human cookbook, there is no shortage of creepy things this individual has done. And prior to you seeing this, not a lot of people even knew this account existed. That being said, it's one of the few out there we will be talking about that still exists and remains active till this day. And so it is. On October 4th of 1994, Nico would make plans to meet up with a guy he had spoken to in an anonymous chat room. And at around noon that day, this guy, Thierry, allows Nico into his home, and as soon as he does, Nico pulls out his .22, and I quote, "After a few awkward moments pass by as they're staring each other into their eyes, Nico pulls the trigger, instantly dropping Thierry. A few minutes would pass by before Nico would fire several more rounds. It was at this point he walked into the guy's kitchen, grabbed a bag of cookies, came back out, sat in the corner of the room, and watched his victim while eating those cookies until he was sure the man was deceased. And after everything was said and done, Nico would be caught attempting to purchase a VCR with one of the man's checks. And well, here's the real kicker. After spending nearly 7 years behind bars, Nico is currently out and living his best life, all while profiting off of this crime, placing him on our list of TikTokers who did terrible things, episode 12. Clap Daddy, creator class type, cosplayer, specialty, all things mafia, claim to fame, JJ the mob boss. Well, back in 2019, Clap Daddy, or Colton, had amassed a respectable 1.6 million followers on TikTok, as well as a healthy 70,000 on Instagram. And chances are, if you were on the platform at that time, you would have stumbled across a few videos of this guy dressed up looking all mafiosa. No matter how hard you tried, you could not escape what had just become one of the biggest trends Friends on TikTok of 2019. And within just a couple of weeks, Colton would be seen collaborating with some of the biggest creators on the platform. And here it is. TikToker Ava Lee would post a series of videos pertaining to the predatory-like behavior of Colton and another creator. And while I'm well aware the other creator was the main subject of these allegations, we will solely be focusing on Colton during this video. Well, turns out Colton had a habit of speaking and acting inappropriately towards individuals who were not yet of age. And while Ava specifically would not give many details, it wasn't long before one of his victims would come forward providing evidence in the form of a Discord chat log, in which Colton would not only say some very inappropriate things, he was legitimately flirting with somebody who was not yet of age. And after this, it wouldn't be long before more and more people will begin to come forward talking about their experiences with Colton, and in some cases he would offer to pay for a hotel room for them to both stay in. Well, over the course of the next few weeks, Clap Daddy would do everything he possibly could to get people to take his side, posting a series of response videos completely gaslighting the fact that he had even done anything wrong. And it was during this series of responses that everyone ultimately saw his downfall. And just like that, Colton began making all of his accounts private. Eventually, one by one, they would all be taken down, placing Colton on our list of TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, Episode 13. Noah Gale, otherwise known as M5 Noah. Creator class type, rich kid. Specialty, driving a BMW. Claim to fame, the following incident. So a lot of us out here remember Cameron Herron from 2019. For those of you who don't, this is a kid involved in an illegal street race that led to the death of a mother and her child, leaving a father with his whole life completely ripped away from him. Now, while I wanted to do a video solely on Cameron, there's just simply no evidence out there to support he actually had a TikTok. The reality of it is, all of the accounts people claim to be his were really just stan accounts after the trial had started. Well, Noah would actually post videos of some of the reckless things he had been doing, some of which involve driving at extremely high rates of speed, cutting it up, having people in the comment section bet on how fast he was actually going. And here it is. On January 22nd, Noah would slam into the back of a Nissan Juke traveling at over 150 miles an hour, sending the back bumper of that Juke well beyond the passenger seats. In addition to this, that Nissan would fly off into the distance, rolling several times. And the worst part is, it had been fully loaded down with passengers, and as a result, 6 individuals would lose their lives. Well, it wouldn't be long before police would notice Noah's Instagram handle on the back of his BMW. This in turn would lead them to his TikTok, both of which he had been posting enough evidence to proceed in charging him with 6 counts of vehicular homicide. M5 Noah is currently in Florida being held on a $300,000 bond awaiting his trial, which is why you will find him on our list of TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, Episode 14. Shuru Khan, otherwise known as Shurkan Chowdhury 02. Creator class type, actor. Specialty, romanticizing violence. Claim to fame, one hell of a terrifying scene. See, prior to mid-2020, Shuru had been posting content on TikTok for quite some time, and most of his content involved these weird violent depictions of certain situations, generally hinting at 2 distinct underlying tones. 1. Domestic violence. 2. A crime of passion. Well, little did his 4,000 followers know, the way he had been acting on camera gave a fairly good insight into who he was in real life, and more so how he was behaving towards another TikToker, a girl by the name of Nana. So allegedly, Shuru had a thing for Nana, and after time and time again of being rejected, he takes it upon himself to track her down in the middle of a supermarket, uninvited of course, and propose to her in front of her entire family. Needless to say, this did not go well for Shuru, as she would almost instantly deny him on the spot. And as soon as this happens, Shuru, in broad daylight, whips out a knife and repeatedly stabs Nana in front of her entire family. I mean, it is pure pandemonium. There are people screaming everywhere, and before her family can even respond, the damage had already been done. Nana would unfortunately succumb to her injuries in just a few hours. Shuru was fairly quickly arrested and charged for the murder, placing him on the list of TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, Episode 15. Ashwini Kasha, otherwise known as Johnny Data, creator class type, villain, specialty, angry all the time, claim to fame, going absolutely insane. So back in 2019, Johnny, like many, had dreams of becoming a world-renowned actor, and one of the ways he was able to live out this fantasy was to get on TikTok and start creating content. With that, he adopted this persona of a character named Johnny. In essence, this was a guy who had everything he held dearly in life ripped away from him, and thus was ready to take out his anger on all of those who had wronged him. Well, to the roughly 23,000 people that followed him on TikTok, they would have had no reason to believe there was any truth behind the threats he was making in his videos. Well, unfortunately, this couldn't be further from the truth. And by October of 2019, Johnny has produced a list of people he is going to start mowing down in real life. A list of which included, but was not limited to, his own friends and relatives. With that, he tracks down his first two victims, who, as stated in his manual, were a couple of teens who had publicly shamed him somewhere along the way. And here we are, the middle of a sugarcane field in broad daylight, surrounded by several witnesses. Johnny pulls out an AK and just starts going to town on these two guys. And before you know it, he has run off and disappeared out into this field. Well, within just a few hours, a full-scale manhunt involving thousands of law enforcement and army personnel is launched, and a period of 4 days would go by before Johnny would strike once more, this time a flight hostess by the name of Nikita Sharma. This is said to be the #1 person on his list. As a matter of fact, just a day before going on this killing spree, he made a Facebook post stating, "If I can't have you, I will not allow you to be with anyone else." Well, just a few hours later, he would be spotted by law enforcement in a bus, and as they started the process of surrounding that bus, this nightmare would come to an abrupt end in the form of Johnny taking his own life. It is said he had been mentally unstable for quite some time. However, he completely lost grip with reality when his mother passed away earlier that year, making Johnny just one of the many TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, Episode 16. Michelle Melody, creator class type, model, specialty, whatever, I do what I want, claim to fame, delivering on that promise. Well, prior to September of this year, Michelle had accumulated a fairly strong following on TikTok of around 950,000 followers, as well as a fairly respectable 188,000 on Instagram. That being said, most of her content very much gave off this persona similar to Danielle Bergoli, the Cash Me Outside girl, and with each post she produced, her following would continue to grow. That is, till one day in September, she, along with her then boyfriend, are in their apartment located in Thurgau, Switzerland, and they are in the middle of this fairly heated argument. And as this argument continues to intensify, it eventually gets to the point where Michelle snaps. She proceeds to grab a knife and just begin flailing it towards her boyfriend, stabbing and slicing him several times in the process. Now, thankfully, she would not hit any of his organs or major arteries, and thus, he was actually able to walk out of the hospital the very next day. But for Michelle, within less than a half an hour, she is being arrested and taken to jail. And in the midst of all this chaos, both her official TikTok account and her Instagram have since been taken down. So when you're scrolling through all of those profiles after this, just know, not a single one of those is her actual account. That being said, there is no information about any charges being made towards the boyfriend, meaning as of this time, he is not suspected of any wrongdoing, placing Michelle on our list of